An existing office building owner, this floor plan without the blue markings that you can faintly see was the floor plan of an office building from 2011. The blue markings are showing how the suites have merged between 2011 and 2015. What purpose would be served by this commission reviewing that? There was 2 office users. Now the space is 1 office space. I don't see any public purpose being served by them paying a $15,000 filing fee and coming before you for a 4 to 6 month process. Second situation, Grammy Building. The office building has been vacant for more than 1 year. The prior owner came to you with a tier 3 housing project. You guys didn't like it. The new owners got a clue. They just want to reoccupy the site that's been in a single tenant use with a single tenant use. Do you really think that they need to come forward to you for a CUP? What's the purpose? They have to go to ARB for a design review to make sure the design works. Auto dealers. Chris, do you want to speak to this a little bit further? We had hours and hours of discussion about auto dealers. You want them to revitalize their facility in the urban auto dealership format. To do that, you said if you're on an existing site and you want to develop dealer site and you want to develop consistent with the dealer standards, then you don't need a CUP if you stay under the development review thresholds. So again, I ask you to focus your discussion tonight on 17 and 19. I know other issues have come up, but we're not proposing any changes to any other regulations that are already in your code. Thank you. And Chris is going to speak further to auto dealers.
How much time do we have left? Oh, wow. I won't probably need that. I sat through some of your hearings. Paula sat through them all. So I was quite familiar with all of your hearings on the zoning ordinance and those on the council. The auto dealer CUP requirements were very carefully and very deliberately crafted. If a dealer wishes to develop on an R-zone parking lot, that takes a CUP. If a dealer wishes to build an auto dealership on a site that's not currently in auto dealership use, that requires a CUP. If a dealer wants to expand on their existing auto dealership site and they comply with the urban auto dealer form, very exacting design and form standards that are intended to get rid of the surface parking lots along the boulevard and make them more neighborhood friendly, that does not require a CUP. The reason is to incentivize dealers to make a good choice, not a mediocre or worse choice. That was done by this commission. That was done by the council. You and the council structured the development review threshold with the same goal in mind. There was never any talk about footnotes 17 and 19 trumping that hard and difficult and nuanced work that you did and that the council did. Now, I have been afraid to ask staff if they think footnotes 17 and 19 trump what are footnotes 5 and 6. There are specific footnotes in the table, 5 and 6, that are designed for auto dealerships. They address it very directly. There was never any discussion at this body or the council or amongst the public about having footnotes 17 and 19 trump the nuanced approach to auto dealers. We think this is simply a drafting error. It doesn't reflect the intent of this commission, and it doesn't reflect the intent of the council. And we've summarized, actually someone else other than me summarized in Exhibit B to the chamber letter, the series of discussions about this issue where Commissioner McKinnon stood out for using the term retail, and I think Councilmember Davis with others supporting her talked about big box retail, gave examples of we don't want another Staples on Wilshire without careful review. Somebody I recall referencing the Whole Foods on Wilshire with the same goal in mind. No one said we need that requirement because of auto dealers. Now, what are the implications for car dealers? Most car dealers have more than 75 foot of frontage. Virtually any change to a dealership, even if one that you favor, would require a CUP. That undercuts fundamentally the approach to auto dealers taken by this commission and by the council in the zoning ordinance. So we would urge you to correct this. In terms of other issues about ground floor uses, there's a very complicated set of regulations in the ZOW. We aren't claiming perfection on the part of the ZOW. If you wish to reopen that for discussion, we're all happy to participate. That's not the issue tonight. That's another issue. This is solely about footnotes 17 and 19 and trying to correct the document to match the intent. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Parry.
Yes. Setting aside the auto dealers part of this story. If the objective is to provide a discretionary process where the commission or council on appeal could say that consolidation into a single tenancy, say on a ground floor, is not appropriate for a particular location, wouldn't 17 and 19 need to be applied to mixed use permit, to uses that could otherwise be approved by an MUP? Excuse me, not minor use permit, sorry, not mixed use.
If you, this commission, and I'm sorry, I'm not so familiar with MUP because it's new. My understanding is it's not reviewed by the commission.
Right.
If you, the commission, want to see every single change that happens in this city, yes. Is a big change from what you guys do today. You are requiring CUPs for so many uses that you don't require CUPs already. So that would be my caution, that yes, if you want to see it where it says MUP, if you want to review it as a commission, it needs to be a CUP, but I'm just not sure that you want to. Unless, you're going to create a lot of work for me, but it just doesn't make
So the only reason you didn't include it was
because I felt that this commission had decided that the appropriate level of review was the MUP process when you adopted the zoning ordinance. Yes, that's.
But you're applying this to things that we determined could be done by right. So even for those uses that, at least the way it's drafted here, even those uses that the city deems to be by right, you are applying 17 and 19 to.
Because the commission and council discussion was that for retail uses, we want to prevent big box retail. So when I went back and I said, pet stores is basically a retail use, and even though it's not covered by general retail sales, you would also probably want to review a Petco. And so that is where most of these uses are all retail. Business services, I think it's like copy shops and print lands. To me, it's a big box retail. If you have a Kinko's over 12,500 square, it's that same issue that you're trying to get at. So that's where I was focused, because the other ones would have a level of review because they'd have MUP review or CUP.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
I'll ask the same question I asked before. When you struck it from the title of all of these categories, and which I agree with, it's an unfortunate place to put that important of a footnote. You did strike it for all public and semi-public uses, and you understand that, right?
Yeah, because the way the footnote's drafted, it only applies to commercial use tenants, so I didn't know that if public and semi-public.
Okay. So, and then likewise, though, it remained for what would be industrial uses. Is that
industrial? Artist studio.
Like when you go to City Bike Share and light fleet-based services.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to regulate the city's bike share facilities.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking.
I don't see anything in industrial that you would be concerned about, but if you have
if someone came and built a 1,200 square foot, 13,000 square foot light industrial facility.
But I don't think that's allowed. Where's that allowed?
Well, it's,
the only use you're allowing that's industrial is support facilities. Otherwise, it's like an artist.
No, I'm saying, so I'm talking about, whatever utilities, major or minor might be, the gas company comes in and they say, well, gosh, we need a whole new facility because we're losing our facility on Centinela. Whatever, I guess what I'm saying.
Well, I just think that I'm guessing the definitions of utility major and utility minor are already capturing your concern.
Okay.
Because utility major is already limited, utility minor is permitted, but I would guess if we look up the definition itself includes a use.
Maybe this is a question for Tony, but I'll just wait for it to come up in the discussion.
Commissioner Kennedy.
During your testimony, you said that you had received comments from the public and others in response to your application this evening, and therefore you are now responding to them here. Has the members of the public also received your response to their response?
I sent it to the commission and staff involved.
How
so
did
that's
you
my
receive?
only
So,
way to-
if there were members of the public commenting on tonight's item, how did you receive those comments from the public?
Well, they're public records, and as the applicant, the chamber requested the public correspondence. And so we saw those late yesterday, I believe, and early this morning, and no, late yesterday, and realized that, yes, the definition of general retail sales did not encompass all retail uses, and it deserved another look at what other uses are retail sales, but are classified like pet stores as their own use.
And this proposal that this red line, I'll just call it the
Right.
red line, is your red line. This isn't staff's red line. Is that correct?
It's my red line. I'm just realizing the 19 and 17 didn't get redlined on the last page.
Okay. And the public, though, hasn't been provided with this document, have they?
I think it's available.
Tonight at the meeting? Okay.
Yes, and it was emailed to the commission and staff earlier this afternoon.
Okay. And when the city council was going over, let's just say the blue line,
Right.
what was the reason that you or anyone from your firm felt it wasn't necessary to bring this issue up to them then?
No one caught it because it's, again, up by Mixed Use Boulevard, up in the top of the chart, not next to a use. And the commission and council all had discussed use by use by use. There was no one thought that this could be interpreted because they were saying we want to regulate big box retail. There was no discussion that this would apply to auto dealers or existing office buildings. It's only when we asked the question, when we were doing due diligence on a property, and staff said, no, we think it could be interpreted this way because of the way it's drafted, and we asked for clarification and were told the best way to get clarification was to file a text amendment to this body.
Okay, I had another question, but I'm going to jump ahead to another one because that one just escaped me all of a sudden. Not needing a CUP for combined uses or new or even existing when it exceeds a certain size, removing these size thresholds, how much do you think that would impact housing or affordable housing on upper floors?
I do not think this applies to housing. It says commercial tenant.
But it does apply to housing if you have a box, and within that box, you can you have removed a discretionary process for I'll just say, for lack of a better term, excessive amounts of let's just say creative office.
So if I want to build a new building with creative office, I already have to get a CUP. That's my point is, so if you want to incentivize building owners to knock down their existing buildings and build taller housing projects, yes, this would provide another barrier to them using their existing building. I just haven't heard that policy direction been given.
Well, I'm just trying to think about the unintended consequences, and I'm wondering if, removing this size threshold would either, which I'm worried about, enable a lot of creative office, for example, on the ground floor without the appropriate oversight, even with the linear footage restriction, or would it enable that for office space to be built on the second floor where housing might have gone?
So first question is, it depends what district you're in. if on the screen I move to the active use requirements, and these apply on the ground floor for a minimum average depth of 40 feet, in no case less than 25 feet, for a minimum of 60% of the frontage. If you're in the neighborhood commercial district on Maine or Montana, you're limited to these uses, Roman numeral 1 through 10. So you can't do creative office. If you're in another commercial district, the policy direction from this commission and the council was that you can do other commercial uses, but you cannot do residential and you cannot do office, but you can do creative office and offices with walk-in clientele and offices within a structure that was designed, approved, and continuously used. So again, not proposing to change that. That was a separate policy discussion, and I understand that people may want to reopen that, but that was the policy discussion that was had, that we can't have retail everywhere because we're not building enough housing. We don't have enough density to support retail on every boulevard. So there needs to be some other uses that we can put, and the decision was no, not business and professional office, but yes, we can have creative office.
So anyway, the short answer is, in some instances, yes, this could potentially take away some floor area that would have gone to housing.
No, that's not the case, because any new office requires a CUP. If I want to build 1 square foot building, I need a CUP. So you guys will get to decide. But if I want to build housing, I don't need a CUP. That is why it's a fundamental change to your code to require a CUP for office, for new, but the compromise that is existing gets to stay permitted.
Could I ask a question? So some of the comments, in fact, a majority of the comments that we've had have seen this as a very greedy grab by the Chamber of Commerce. How do you answer that? Well, I mean,
I would say that
it's the tenor of the comments we've received. So
I believe, and I fundamentally disagree with staff's interpretation. I will just say, I believe that footnote 21 that says new office requires a CUP and existing office is permitted trumps, because that's specific to office. I believe the auto dealer stuff that's specific to auto dealers trumps. I believe the bank stuff that's specific to banks trumps, the market stuff. So I don't think it's a greedy grab. I think it's the chamber investing a lot of money to try to get this clarified for the record in the most transparent process possible.
So in your mind, what are the two most significant impacts? Is it office changing over to office? So Fresco Enterprises moves out and Fonda Bernardi Corporation, global corporation, moves in, soon to be.
Or they merge.
Or they merge, yes, interesting idea. And they need some more space, which is what I think I heard you say was the impact of that little drawing up there.
Yep.
And then the second thing I think I heard you say was that auto dealers who we've crafted the urban auto dealer format would also be relieved from getting a CUP. Are they the two major things?
And the third one is the existing single tenant vacant building situation where it's set back from the street. It doesn't make sense.
How much office changes hands every year in Santa Monica? Are we talking 1 million square feet or 500,000 square feet?
I don't know the answer to that.
So how many times a year would you and your law firm and the land use lawyers be in front of us if we didn't remove this? Are we talking about your $800 or $900 an hour being here every week? Is that the truth? I mean,
yeah, I think I would probably have to file 5 CUPs, or I would have to tell my clients that they need to carve up their building into less than 12,500 square feet, because somehow we've now decided that the perfect size for a business is that it must be less than 12,500 square feet. And somehow when the office gets larger than 12,500 square feet, it becomes this horrible thing that we need to review, or it creates some impact. And I think the impacts are actually less. The TDM ordinance requires greater TDM requirements of larger employers.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, there are. Commissioner Fresco.
I'll ask you, You seem to know as much as staff at this point. In terms of the active commercial design requirements, if these buildings, if, you know, business A expands into business B's vacated desks and they just move into the space and they don't do anything, we don't get a chance to upgrade the building to have our street front active, pedestrian friendly, transparent stuff that we've come up with. So, I mean, I guess I'm making more of a statement than a question, but the question is, I guess, what I was thinking was that maybe a little thing in 21 that says that the commercial office can keep their permit and not have to get a new CUP and can continue being a commercial office provided they meet the active commercial design standards. Do you see? I don't think we'll be allowed to do that today, but I feel like that's like a big part of our code. That whole thing that we're talking about here is something that we see for the future of Santa Monica. And if this commercial office continues to turn over and we don't get an opportunity to get that redesign, then
So if they are proposing changes to the facade, the ARB
they
does
would
review it.
automatically
If
do that. But
they're
what
not
if-
proposing changes to the facade, yes, but my point with this text amendment is that if they're less than 12,500 square feet, you also don't get that review.
That's
So
true.
they're just going to find a smaller tenant. I mean, I just don't see what goal you're...
So you feel like adding something like that would be the same level of disincentive as the CUP?
Right. I mean, I hear you that in Disneyland World, we would love to have every single building. I just think there has to be recognition. There's existing buildings. They were built as office buildings. They were approved as office buildings. We wouldn't probably approve them today, but they're there. And do you want them to be vacant or trying to find this tenant that fits in this box, or have the tenant develop two different companies so they can have two different business licenses? I mean, I think there has to be recognition that there's this existing fabric and we're doing the best we can, and the new requires a ton of review, and it's something that no other city is doing, as far as I know, requiring a CUP for office, at least the cities around us, so.
All right, thank you. So let's move to hear from the public. Zena Josephs first. Ms. Alstakanis, Ms. Crane, and it looks like Mr. Hoyer has left us. But if not, we'll hear from him.
Thank you. Speaking only for myself, I recall that when Vivian Kahn was first hired to write the new zoning ordinance, the goal was to simplify zoning in Santa Monica. And listening to Paula's description, it seems far from simple. And I have to admit, I didn't understand a lot of what she was talking about. I would request the commission deny the text amendment. In Sunset Park, we have neighborhood commercial, a lot of it on Ocean Park Boulevard on Pico, and we have general commercial on Lincoln from Pico to the South City limit. And I believe the existing restrictions were added by the Planning Commission and the City Council in order to achieve the loose vision of pedestrian-friendly streets with a variety of small neighborhoods serving businesses. So I don't see a good reason to relax the restrictions unless there's something that I don't understand, which is always possible. I attended a community meeting regarding some changes to the outside of the Grammy site at Virginia Avenue Park a while ago, and I assumed that was going to the ARB, so I'm sort of wondering what else is going on that we haven't been told about. So thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
Amy Oxtacolnis, Northeast Neighbors. I want to start out by saying it never ceases to amaze me how the lawyers and the Chamber of Commerce attempt to rewrite history or change the narrative. I was actually personally here during the Planning Commission, City Council, and community discussion of these standards. And the focus of this discussion was to provide oversight for any large projects, not just big box retail, Big box retail was just an example because we have some of those examples of what can happen when too big of a project goes in without oversight on Wilshire. It was an illustration. It wasn't the only focus of the discussion. It's certainly not by the community and not in the exchanges that I attended and I was part of. So I think that fact needs to be corrected. Second, one of the key concerns that's been missed in the conversation thus far is a key concern for our neighborhood is the change of large existing spaces in big buildings from general office to medical. This has been happening in our neighborhood, and that's one of the reasons why this text amendment, should not be approved. Those are the only oversight regulation that we still have left that would provide oversight for these large conversions. Medical is much more lucrative. It can have immense and devastating impacts on the surrounding neighborhood if large medical goes into office space that's been converted. There's an economic incentive to do this. And if these regulations are removed, we could see wholesale buildings changing from office to medical, permanently damaging the character of neighborhoods. So it's important that these be maintained. And in terms of going off script again, one other point, Zena brought this up, the discussion brought this up. These are complicated, and it's hard to think through all the possible permutations or types of uses that could be proposed. All the more reason to have oversight for these larger projects. I think the discussion itself this evening makes the point of why it's important to maintain these. So getting to the Northeast Neighbors letter, which is also supported by our friends in Noma and Wilmot, who could not be here tonight, to foster the right mix and appropriate scale of neighborhood services serving uses on Wilshire Boulevard and throughout our city, Northeast Neighbors request that the Planning Commission not recommend to City Council the text amendments to the zoning ordinance proposed by the Chamber of Commerce in this agenda item. This amendment would remove important safeguard requirements of a CUP for any conditional use other than retail sales that seeks to occupy more than 12,500 square feet or 75 square feet of street frontage on mixed-use boulevard loader, and general commercial, or 7,500 square feet or 50 feet of street frontage in neighborhood commercial. We disagree with the staff report that a CUP should only be required of tenant spaces that change use to retail or seek to expand retail sales space. Any large change of tenant space has the potential to impact neighbors, both residents and businesses, and alter the character of the boulevard and the neighborhood. This is precisely why the Planning Commission proposed and City Council approved this language in the new zoning. We also disagree with the contention in the staff report that this change will, quote, ensure a mix of local serving retail uses in the mixed use and commercial districts. In our view, it will do exactly the opposite. By removing oversight and thus incentivizing the development of larger commercial non-retail spaces, including medical, that squeeze out smaller neighborhood serving retail uses. These restrictions were added to ensure that our city moves towards achieving the loose vision of pedestrian-oriented boulevards with a diversity of human scale, neighborhood-serving businesses that activate the street.
Thank you.
And Trish is going to continue.
Ms. Crane.
Continuing our letter from Northeast Neighbors, without this oversight, we risk developing more dead zones, similar to the 2800 block of Wilshire on the north side, which is dominated by medical uses that are a regional draw, but provide little benefit to the neighborhood and do nothing to activate the street. Huge turnover in these buildings into our streets, searching for parking that is not provided in the building. A CUP should be required in order to facilitate discussion of any large-scale use, not only retail, to ensure that such changes are in keeping with the vision of the general plan for the area outlined in the loose. Excuse me. As for this red line that's been presented tonight, it's the first opportunity we've had to see it. The Chamber would have us believe that they have provided their own red line rewrite of this section of the zoning code because they seek change on behalf of two businesses. The fact is that this text amendment would result in a removal of oversight for all existing and new building across the city. Page 2 of the staff report makes this clear. Quote, these limitations apply to all tenant spaces in new or existing buildings in these mixed use and commercial zoning districts, regardless of the type of use. End quote. The CUP requirement as it appears in the zoning ordinance was indeed meant to provide oversight for all existing and new businesses, and that should not be changed. If the city grants this amendment to the text of the zoning, we could end up with neighborhood-serving retail businesses being squeezed out by block-long commercial ventures. Why would this commission allow commercial uses to expand uncontrolled in a city that seeks to increase housing and a variety of neighborhood-serving businesses that increases walkability? The council intended this as a catch-all so that any large project, not otherwise covered by the regulations, very complex, would have to go before the Planning Commission to make sure that it is consistent with our general plan. This doesn't mean that such changes won't be granted. It simply means such changes will be reviewed by this body. Northeast Neighbors request that the Commission not limit this important provision in the zoning ordinance. Thank you.
The applicant now has some time to respond.
Any large project. I do not see an existing building trying to continue to occupy its building with tenants that want to occupy it, and as one may grow and as one may shrink, and changing the interior, demising walls, maybe that's not the technical term, but as not a large project. I don't get it. This is not taking away the CUP requirement for the new office buildings. The issue of office to medical, it's not on the table tonight. It was discussed by this commission and the council that the difference in parking requirements already serve as a barrier to office to medical, and we already require a CUP for new medical office. Again, to just go back to the greed issue, to give a little history, many members of the chamber board wanted to oppose the entire idea of even regulating big box retail. But those of us who were involved in the zoning ordinance process convinced them, went back and listened to the tape to make sure we were correct, that this commission and the council, their intent was to regulate big box retail. So we convinced the other board members that we're not going to file a text amendment to change the zoning ordinance, because that was the intent. We need to narrow the amendment so that it's limited to the intent, and we're not trying to go and reopen the whole zoning ordinance. To go to the issue of dead space. Dead space is going to exist if you provide further barriers to leasing space that has already been in office use. The most dead space is a vacant space. Do we want to provide more barriers? Again, we already have the most stringent barriers of any local jurisdiction regarding office use. And with respect to the intent, I hope to have a decision tonight, but when you want to grab a glass of wine, go back and listen to the tapes. It doesn't take that long if you find the right spot. This whole discussion was about retail. Every other use was discussed, and different thresholds were attributed to those, most lower, banks, restaurants, etc., and the same issue at the council. So the intent was always retail use, and I urge you to please adopt this, recommend that this go forward, and do not open up this discussion and reopen the zoning ordinance at this time.
Commissioner Parry has a question.
Yeah, you noted that under the current rules, an office could go in and occupy a space that is an existing building that's currently used as office. Am I right that it actually could occupy any building? It could be a retail space that it could go and occupy the way this is drafted?
Could you be a little bit more specific? Are you talking about creative office, or are you talking?
Yes, creative office or walk-in clientele.
Staff will interpret their own ordinance, but if you're not in the neighborhood commercial, it looks like that's how it reads, that creative office is permitted there.
So theoretically, it could crowd out retail. The market may not support such a thing, but
you get much higher rents for retail on the ground floor.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. So the public... Oh, did you have a question? Commissioner Fresco.
So if condition 21 allows permitted buildings that were existing as of the ordinance to continue that use, does it go across uses? Can they do, as these people suggested, that you could have a regular, you know, a real estate office and, you know, an upstairs sort of an operation, and then you move out, and then a medical office next door could take over and expand? Does it go across uses, or does it have to have been the same kind of use in order for them to expand and be exempt?
I believe it goes across uses, and this specific issue of medical to business was discussed, but for medical, you have to park it at 1 per 250,
Right.
and office, you have to park at 1 per 300. So most of the office buildings, there's 1 or 2 exceptions probably in the city where they're overparked, but most of them are underparked, and you would need to get a parking, variance in order to do that, which requires review by this commission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, are there any more questions? Oh, you had a question?
I have a question for Paula, if she can come back. Just a random thought off of something that Commissioner Fresco mentioned earlier, and I'm going to find it in the book to look at it, but what if we added creative office to the active design standards? How do you feel about that?
I don't understand the question. It's in the active design.
Well, I think at least I talked to Mr. Kim this afternoon, and we were talking about how creative office is exempt from that. Is that correct?
Yes, that creative office can be located in that area on the ground floor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's not what I'm proposing.
Okay.
That, to me, again, that was a completely different policy discussion by the commission and the council, and that's how it landed. That was the compromise, was no, we're not going to allow business and professional, but we're going to allow creative, and I'm not proposing to change that. Chamber's not proposing to change that. It's just a square footage.
I understand that
issue.
you might not. I mean, I don't know if the commission would, or
Well, that's
but
not
it would be
before you
interesting. But
Yeah, that's not before you tonight.
Right.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the issue is before us, and one of 2 motions need to be moved, either to propose the text amendment or to recommend that it not be adopted. Commissioner Parry, you had the
Yeah,
first
I'll start with a few questions of staff, and then I might
We'll see where it
venture
gets
a
to.
motion. Yeah.
Mr. Kim.
Kind of a discussion of the evolution of this, of requirement 17 and 18. Am I right that 17 began on Main Street?
That's correct.
And did it apply to all uses on Main Street in the previous code?
I'd have to look at the previous code. Does anybody have one?
Mr. Rosenbaum has one.
I looked at that, and it didn't.
I really like the tabs in my new code.
I did look that up earlier today, and it was just for Main Street.
But the question is, was every use included within that?
Mr. Martin, you
or-
might help us on this.
Yeah, and Tony will find it. But what we recall is that it was just a standard. It wasn't specific to a use. It also didn't apply if you had an existing building. The one we think of as the what's now Muji. It was Patagonia. Before that, it was Reebok. But as that changed from one tenant to the other, that requirement didn't kick in because it was an existing retail space. So it was all about combining smaller retail spaces into one larger retail space.
It was about incentivizing the small grain retail on Main Street. That's where it came from.
So then that general concept was, if I recall correctly, our discussion applied to the other neighborhood commercial areas in the city, and the basic provisions were maintained. Is that accurate? That the Main Street rules were expanded to the other NC areas, and that's what we have today with respect to number 17.
That's correct. Yes, that was intended to carry over that standard.
Right.
Yes.
And so the way this is drafted, does the way that it was applied on Main Street previously, did that also carry over? Where if it's an existing space, there's no expansion, then there was no CUP requirement.
So if you're saying if the existing space is already larger than that area threshold and another use came into that space, would they have required a CUP? I don't believe we had any CUPs for that type of scenario. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's how it was
Back to the book.
regulated.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so
trying to find the wording.
I'll leave that as an open question on
Yeah.
whether that was the case then and whether that carried over into the existing, into the new code. And so then for number 19, that was that began here at this body, and that was an effort to apply that general concept in order to achieve like a finer grain of uses along the boulevards, much like what we see today on Main Street. Is that consistent with staff's understanding of how this story has unfolded?
Yes, it was the commission's intent to spread that to the other commercial boulevards.
Okay. And okay, so what I would suggest, and it's really it's what makes sense to me, and I'll put it out there for discussion. When we were talking about, first of all, I want to thank the chamber for bringing this up. The way that it is crafted in the current zoning ordinance is inconsistent with my understanding of what we were doing. So I'm glad that they're bringing it up, particularly on things for uses above the ground floor. I never had the intention of putting limitations and disincentives for larger tenants that may face more restrictive TDM requirements compared to many little tenants, which we also want those as well. But at no point did I think that we were creating a disincentive to large tenants within an existing office building. So for me, it really was a ground floor focus. Really thinking about how the uses along the ground floor, that we want larger spaces to be the exception rather than the rule, and that the CUP requirement made sense for that goal. There's talk about how there are requirements for physical treatment of the space in order to try to encourage pedestrian friendliness, but it's also the active uses themselves that we're trying to get on the boulevards. So the motion I'd like to put forward is that that for number 19, we do expand it, I should say restrict it, to the uses that are being proposed here in the table the revised proposal from the chamber. But we also include the minor use permitted uses. We include creative office. We include the walk-in clientele office space. And so it's covering quite a bit, but we change it to only apply to the ground floor. Both obviously the 75 feet of frontage and also the total square footage threshold, that we'd only be counting the square footage that's on the ground floor, that's the focus. And, I understand that this approach would, leave some projects seems like the Grammy building having to come to us for a conditional use permit. But, to me, that seems like an appropriate way to deal with unusual circumstances such as that one. So I offer that up as a motion.
Okay. Is there a...
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Newbold.
Could you say again, in addition to the chamber's suggestions, the other?
Creative office, because the way that this is drafted, this being the active commercial design areas, the requirements there, it currently allows creative office and walk-in clientele office space on the ground floor, that number 19 be applied to those.
Including in neighborhood commercial, you want to use 19 and not 17?
Actually, for 17, I was going to suggest that we leave it
where it is.
That we leave it as it is.
Does that clear it up for you, Commissioner Newbold?
No. I thought you listed other uses.
Well, the other uses are the ones indicated on the chamber's revised proposal, plus those uses that within, again, related to number 19, within mixed-use boulevard low, mixed-use boulevard, and general commercial, those uses that require a minor use permit. So that if they do exceed those thresholds on the ground floor, they have to come to this body.
You had three things. You had a minor use permit, you had creative office, and you had walk-in clientele.
I guess I'm still confused because
Yes.
I'm looking here. So you're saying anything that says MUP, you would want to...
Within those districts. That right now,
So for example, restaurants, full-scale, limited service, and takeout of 2,500 feet to 5,000 is an MUP. Are you proposing... You're not proposing to change that one? Because that's already, it's already a small scale.
well, no, that would be included with how I've described it here, but it would need to exceed the thresholds, and I don't think that it would.
Well,
By
just
definition.
By definition, it would.
Right.
So I guess we, okay.
Okay, so Commissioner Parry has moved a motion. Is there a seconder for that motion at this stage?
I have more questions about the motion.
Okay, off you go.
I'm sorry to point.
That's Commissioner Parry, actually.
No, I was pointing to
Oh,
Gerda.
Commissioner Newbold.
Can't think of names, but that's okay. You were just pointing out that the restaurants, full service, limited service, and takeout 2501 to 5,000. Those you were suggesting might stay at MUP. I mean, it would be silly to put a threshold that is when there's a threshold here and add another threshold. So we could leave that one MUP as it is, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't
Would that
affect
be-
that because the
It
requirement
would just make it
is
more
at
confusing to write
12,000.
it there, though. It
Right.
would be less confusing. So then the things that you're leaving open-ended to condition 21, is still the idea of the professional offices and the medical offices. That's basically what's left
Where's professional? Oh, I see.
after what you did, right?
I'm sorry. repeat
Your
that, please.
intention is that all that's left that's not regulated by size with some sort of CUP threshold is the medical and professional offices that would be in existing buildings, no matter what use the existing buildings had before.
Which page are you on?
2.46 and to 2.47. The last thing on 2.46 is business and professional, and you didn't change that. And on
Well, these would not be allowed on the ground floor.
so you don't care on the upper floors if
That's right.
medical expands into regular office, as long as they meet their parking requirements.
Well, right. I care in
Okay.
other
You won't-
senses, but
But
I'm
not in terms of this.
I'm
A poor
attempting to
choice of
leave
word.
the upper floors alone with number 19.
Mr. Kim.
If I could provide just some quick clarification on that. In theory, there are opportunities for business and professional offices and medical offices to be on the ground floor. The active use requirement applies to a minimum of 60% of the ground floor frontage. So in theory, there are at least 40% where it theoretically could be ground floor office.
But it is a built-in limit on how much frontage those uses could take, because some of it would have to be other uses.
It would need to be a very large building to exceed the threshold, yes, but you never know.
Commissioner
that was-
Kennedy.
Well, but doesn't that go against, I mean, everybody's kind of scratching their heads and going back, and people have watched the meeting and others have read transcripts here tonight and stuff, but doesn't that kind of go against what we have talked about during the zoning ordinance update? It was about size and it was about use together. And I think saying, to me, actually, I kind of feel like the word retail that got used over and over again was almost like interchangeable with the word commercial, and happened really almost I don't want to say by accident, but in a way we understood that we were talking about commercial. And if you look at the part of the transcript that was provided to us by the chamber, and a comment that I made, and I haven't had that glass of wine yet and sat back and rewatched the meeting, but I will. I think the initiation of the discussion was actually about size and was talking about chain stores, because we all know that chain stores can be Starbucks and chain stores can be nail salons and chain stores can be 2,000 square feet. And so it was about creating more neighborhood serving uses that are smaller and fine grained, and allowing opportunities for mom and pop businesses to happen, and not having every ground floor ceiling height on the in new development be 20 feet or more, so that the only people that can afford to come in there are Burger King and banks. It was about really having the opportunity to have that oversight and to create these walkable neighborhoods so we get and stay away from larger uses that tend to be more regional and not neighborhood serving. So, I'm listening very carefully to what Commissioner Perry is proposing, and based on what you're saying, and it would have to be a very large building. Again, I'm taking this opportunity to say, that's my recollection of the discussion that we had over time. And if at some point you got sick of using 3 syllables and said commercial, stopped saying commercial and said retail, and then David started all of a sudden saying retail, and then Ted and Gleam were like, hey, retail, and then somebody goes big box stores, it doesn't mean it really changes what we were talking about. I mean, maybe it was, that was a part of it, but we're overly fixated on that one aspect, which is kind of a misrepresentation of what really happened.
So if there are any more questions, let's have them. Otherwise, let's get into discussion, because that's a very useful.
Actually,
You've got some?
he made a motion.
Yes.
It hasn't been seconded.
No.
We're still
So I'm going to make a
discussing.
substitute motion.
Okay, so just hold on a second. So maybe you can sit down, because
Well, actually, I have a couple of quick
Right, sorry.
questions, point of information.
So I'm trying to get Mr. Kim to finish with the question so we can get to this other issue. So if you've got a
So
question, ask it.
My question is, what's the time, the real time to get a CUP? I start today and I start running. What's the real time to get a CUP?
I believe,
And maybe the
Maybe
years,
Mr. Mark.
the decades of experience that Amanda might be able
Yeah,
to.
let's let Amanda handle
Yeah,
this one.
yeah.
I think it ranges between about 4 to 6 months, depending on the application and how complete it is when we receive it.
Okay. And the typical fee is approximately
I believe it's $15,000 right now.
$15,000. Okay. And a minor use permit, approximate timeline and approximate fee?
I don't remember the new fee.
I don't either. We may have a fee sheet.
But in terms of a timeline, it's a new permit. It goes to the zoning administrator. Zoning administrator permits tend to go more quickly, but you're still looking at, I would say, a 3-month process.
Okay, 3-month process and approximately.
It's, I think, in the $3,000 or $4,000.
So substantially
ballpark.
less. Okay.
Yes.
A lot faster, substantially less.
Yes, but we can double check that fee.
Okay. And then the last question I had was regarding these expanding. If there is no change in the use of, let's say, offices, and an office grows, whether it's on the first floor or on the second floor, is there any reason why we can't write around this requirement? That if there is no change in use, doesn't matter how big it is. You know what I'm saying? In other words, what we're really being asked to do is make a blanket change whose unintended consequences we don't quite understand. It's making us very uncertain because a blanket change was made by putting all those little 19 and 17s at the top, maybe unintentionally, but providing a lot of protections. And now we're seeing the unintended consequences, and I'm just asking, is there any reason why we can't make a specific change to change a specific problem that we know is here, and it may be also a problem that affects the car dealerships, and not do a blanket change to everything on this chart? I'm asking a concept question, and in terms of...
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. The proposal that they've brought forward with specific uses and applying those footnotes to specific uses, that we can certainly do that if they apply it to 17 and 19.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question, Commissioner Fresco?
I just wanted to add that original 50-foot, 757, that came originally from the Ocean Park Zoning Committee, which I served on, and it was all about trying to disincentivize or make it really hard to combine two stores and make bigger stores. We really wanted to keep the grain small, and it was based on the size of the parcels that were on Main Street. I sat there with the measuring thing and I measured every parcel, and there are a few really big ones, a handful like the one that David mentioned, but most of them were within 3,000 and 5,600 feet. So, and some of them had really small, so even 7,500 square feet of the ground floor use of a retail store or any kind of commercial use, watch that, that could be even up to 3 storefronts on in that area, or 2 and some, and it was really a lot. So when we look at the 12,000 and the 75, or 12,500, those are more standard 50-foot lots, and that's like 3 parcels, 5 parcels. It's a lot of space. So we're really not regulating anything if we're only looking at the ground floor with those numbers.
Okay.
So that's just something else to think about.
So, Mr. Kim, I think we've finished the questions.
Sure.
Is there something you wish to add?
Yes, we did look up the fee for a minor use permit, and it's about $6,000.
So why don't you sit down? Let's go back to the mover of the motion. Is there a seconder for that motion at this stage?
I'd like to adjust it slightly.
Please.
in a discussion that's full of considering the unintended consequences, I wanted to ask staff what our timeline is in considering this proposal, and could we ask for staff to take the ideas that we're putting forward for revisions to the code and come back to us before we formulate our recommendation to City Council.
Mr. Martin,
Yes, you can certainly do that.
Yeah,
what
so-
would the timeline be for that to come back? Are we talking 2 weeks, January the 6th, or are we talking 2 months? Because January 6th is just a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, I would say we wouldn't be able to do the analysis and get it back by January 6th, but certainly in February.
Right, the first meeting in February. I see. Okay.
So I would include that in my motion, that is, we're putting forward this idea that I'm proposing for staff to analyze and look at the draft, the language that would be appropriate for achieving those goals, and to raise concerns that they may see within that approach.
Okay. Hold on. Are you seconding that motion? Do we have a seconder for the motion, or do people want to discuss it? Right.
I don't understand the motion.
So,
What I don't understand is, are you changing it to that all of those things you said are now recommendations to guide staff in helping us figure out how to solve this problem?
It's basically a draft recommendation asking for staff's feedback.
So, in that case, I mean, for me, the size of the numbers that are associated with it are really important to consider for unintended consequences. And also the idea that the uses that can be reinstated with new occupants as they change and not have to get a CUP have to be in the same category in order to, I think that would make a lot of sense, because then we know that the things we're not looking at aren't having different impacts on the city. That
so Commissioner Fresco, are you supporting the motion?
if those things can be added, then I would support it.
In fact, are you seconding the motion?
Are you saying yes?
Yes.
Then yes, I
So
second
you're
it.
seconding the motion. Okay. Commissioner Kennedy, you had a question.
So, couple of quick things. So an approval of this motion is really just asking staff to bring us back some more detailed information and focusing on all of the parameters perhaps that we discussed tonight, but focusing on the ones that Chair Parry has brought up, the amendment
Actually,
from...
let's just get that right. Commissioner Parry,
What did I say?
Chair.
I believe it's former chair.
Former Chair.
Oh my God.
Emeritus Chair.
Once you're president, you're always
Yeah.
president.
Keep going.
Sorry about that, Chair. So, and with the additions that Commissioner Fresco added, so I would just like to add that I know we talked about this evening, but the staff report talks about, the effects on new and existing buildings, and so I'd like to hear some of those, the effects
Okay.
on both new and existing with these, and what, happens on upper floors and
Commissioner Newbold.
and all of that.
I guess I have a different perspective. I feel as though this is clearly a drafting error to me, because it doesn't even make any sense. I mean, all of the notes should be at the back, just like every other note. So to me, this is another correction, essentially, and the question to me is which of these allowable uses did we intend? And I think we were very clear that it was retail, and I think we spent a long time discussing the square footage, and there's been so much thought put into this that I feel very comfortable going forward with the Chamber's recommendations with the red line, because I think those capture all the uses that could come in and be, problematic. The only one that I would add would be perhaps veterinary services, only because I picture those big places on Sepulveda coming in, and I think we might want to, we wouldn't want that. I doubt they would want to come into Santa Monica. But I think, to me, we spent a long time on this, and I think the way it's drafted now is completely confusing. I don't understand which trumps what, and I think that needs to be corrected, but I don't think, if you look at this, we are regulating almost everything. I mean, nothing, almost nothing is actually permitted. So I don't understand why we wouldn't be moving forward with this tonight.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Commissioner Newbold, but then by saying that it's all very confusing to you and you're not sure what trumps what, I'm not
That's the
sure it's a great idea to actually say, well, let's go ahead with this request with an admission that it's confusing to you.
No, that's not what I said. I'm saying when you put it up at the top, when you put notes up at the top where they don't belong, that's why they're here, because it doesn't make any sense. And I think staff probably agrees that it doesn't really make sense to put it up there because it's not clear what they're saying. I mean,
Okay, Commissioner Kennedy.
If I may, maybe that's one of the things that, because this has evolved from trying to slice it and dice it tonight, which I would actually even question that the public has had an absolute, thorough opportunity to weigh in on these changes, frankly, because they were presented today. I would say that based, Commissioner Newbold, on what you just said, maybe that's something that this request can encompass, that they say, well, we're going to, if we, this has been identified and there have been a few different ways to look at it. If we removed those size restrictions and started from scratch, like how does each scenario play out? And if it comes back to us in a clearer fashion, we'll have a better opportunity to do the right thing.
Commissioner Fresco.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was just...
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi, would you like to weigh in on this?
If we're going to go down the direction to the staff, then I think there should be some guiding principles, because I agree with Commissioner Greta that it is rather confusing and that it's not intrinsically consistent right now. But it's not just because we've overlaid things from upper columns to things that were quite worked out. It's also because there are these other things that are coming from a different direction. For instance, item 21, that has to do with the battle between existing and new. And that's a different discussion than maybe the consistency of what certain other notes have to do vertically, if you will, on the chart. So I think so the discussion of what trumps what has to be somehow clarified here. That's the real nub of the problem. And there's a little bit of he said, she said here too. In the sense that some people are saying, oh, all this was to avoid the evil big box. Well, it's not clear that that's exactly what was driving previous decisions before I became on the commission, that maybe there were other constraints that people were concerned about, not just big boxes. So,
Commissioner Fresco.
Well, I think all great art is enhanced by the mistakes made by the artist. And, sometimes, so basically what we're asking staff to do is, we see a need for review of things above a certain size at ground level because we want to retain a fine grain and we want to know what's not going to have that fine grain and how it's going to be treated. And we want to be able to allow businesses of similar types to continue using spaces without continually having to come back. It's crazy to have these restrictions on the auto dealerships when there's a whole separate section for auto things that isn't even really part of this, and they should be in their own place. So maybe staff can figure out how to make it less confusing and clarify it, and maybe there's some other way of saying it that's not this little footnote way of doing it. And, you guys are really smart, and I trust you to figure it out for us.
Commissioner Kennedy, and we're coming back this way.
And I agree that the ground floor is a primary focus. I, however, want to point out that because the way 17 and 19 are drafted, the 7,500 square feet of floor area and this part in 19 that says 12,500 square feet of floor area apply to floor area, which is not necessarily on the first floor, but other floors. I just also want to reiterate that we're talking about not just the ground floor.
Okay.
Here.
Commissioner Newbold. Commissioner Perry. So, go, please.
I appreciate Commissioner Fresco bringing up the auto dealers. Within my motion, I'm not intending to apply 17 or 19 to auto dealers. So I want to make that clear. As mentioned in the applicant's statement, they have their own threshold. In response to the statement that, there is confusion within this, I'm hoping that the motion that I'm putting forward is a path towards creating clarity and departs from the approach that's laid out here. So even though I'm saying, I'm not sure the best way to approach it with neighborhood commercial, with number 17, whether we're just looking at that across a column, but we would ask staff to make sure that it's clear when people are looking at this that number 17 applies to these, to all of these uses.
Attorney Rosenbaum.
Yeah, just a quick comment. One, I think it makes a lot of sense for staff to look at this further. Procedurally, how we got before you, as you know, is a text amendment request from the chamber, which is quite specific about what they are seeking to do, which was to amend these two limitations to apply to retail uses only. To the extent that some of the revisions that might be contemplated go beyond what they are seeking, then we're going to need to revise, or at least look at the vehicle about how this look at the vehicle, whether we need to have a different vehicle to get this before you.
Would we not just continue the motion?
Right, but we can't, and it may be, as we review what you've been asking us to look at, it, that it still falls within the confines of what they've requested. I'm just saying if it goes outside of that, we can't, either the request could be amended to broaden it or change it, or we would go through the normal process that staff goes through, the commission goes through when it's looking at amendments, which is commenced through a resolution of intention. It's a different mechanism. I don't know that we need to do that. I think we just wanted to alert you that right now we're limited to the. This has been brought to you by the chamber with a very specific request. If we're going beyond that,
so Attorney Rosenbaum, what are you recommending that we do tonight, having heard the discussion?
I'm not recommending that you. I think you should be clear about the areas in which you want staff to assess,
right?
And to the extent that those are broader or different than what's before you as a result of this chamber.
Is that a continued motion?
It's still, yes, I think it's still continued.
Right.
A continued motion.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kennedy.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it was through the motion and through the discussion, both made clear that the commission feels that potentially this text amendment that the chamber and representatives have brought forward to affect two aspects of the development process for their clients actually affects many, many more potential new or existing developments and because that change that they're seeking applies to many more than just their own client, I think that solves the problem. I think because it applies broadly and differently, that determines it.
So I think we've reached a point where Commissioner Parry's moved a motion. It's been seconded by Commissioner Newbold. No, it was not. It wasn't seconded by Commissioner Fresco. So in thinking about it, in recalling how the Commission came to this point, my recollection was very clear that I had a concern and others had a concern about the big box retail and how we would seek to control them and how we would seek to also have the boulevards and the streets of Santa Monica active and vital places to be. Now, it appears that what was written has impacted everybody across the board. It was certainly never my intention that a change of office and Corporation Fresco moving out and, global entity Fonda Bernardi coming in would suddenly become a CUP. And I don't think through the course of discussion tonight that's what we want either. And certainly you don't want to cut off the hours of work we put into trying to renovate that awful auto alley into a more walkable area. But I've also had the feeling all night that we were working on the fly because we've got these these tables here, and other people are raising other issues. And so the thought that it would go off for a month or two of consultation and discussion and come back with a much better argued position paper from the Planning Commission that members of the community can argue, and then argue whether or not they're being adequately protected by CUPs on a whole range of things. And on that note, we really do have a large number of CUPs for services. That will help it. It won't help the Chamber, who wants a decision tonight, but it's 8 weeks away, and I think that would be a better outcome. So I'm going to support this motion when it comes. If there are no further discussions, I think we need a roll call on that, don't we? And the motion being restated is Commissioner Parry's motion that asks the staff to reconsider a raft of issues that are associated with 17 and 19 and come back in at some time in the future with a position paper and some argument and discussion about the impacts of those changes. I hope I've captured it properly. Thank you. The roll call.
Commissioner Fondo Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Newbold?
Yes.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Chair McKinnon?
Yes. So that motion is continued.
Is it too late to condition that Amanda has to come back with it?
She's never leaving us. Yeah. Future Commission agenda items, item number 10. There appear to be none. Written communications, did we have any? Nope. Are there any public input? Nope. We stand adjourned, and happy holidays, everyone. We'll see you on January the 6th.